So, again, my name's Heather, and it's really nice to meet you all. Um, I'm a behavior analyst, which means um, I look at all the information that happens in the classroom through a behavioral lens. I also have experience teaching special education, particularly kids on the spectrum. Um, in elementary school, I did a lot of home-based therapy for early intervention, kids on the spectrum, and just with big behaviors, not necessarily with an autism diagnosis. So I've had a few different roles throughout the years, and I've been at the ESD for two years now, or this is my second school year. So what is behavior? Behavior is just absolutely anything that we can do. So a lot of times when we see the term behavior on the name of a workshop like this, we automatically think of those negative behaviors. We think about the things that are disruptive to learning. We think about the things that are really getting kids in trouble. And from a behavioral lens, like those are all true, those are behaviors. And from a behavioral lens, there's also behaviors that are positive. Kids raising their hands, kids turning up on time for class, kids being kind to one another. Those are all behaviors. There's also the behaviors that we're doing. How we respond to behavior situations in the classroom is also behavior. So behavior is anything we can see and measure. So anything a person says or does, I like to put in a little bit on the slide about the dead man's test. So from a behavioral lens, there's this idea that anything that a dead person can do is actually not behavior. And the only reason I share this is because one of the things I see most commonly on behavior plans when I come into a school or when I ask someone, hey, what's going on? They say, oh, the kid's super non-compliant. And non-compliance is actually a non-behavior. It's the not doing of a thing. So usually I would then press and say, well, what's the behavior that's actually happening? Are they leaving the classroom and they're just walking away and going to do something different? Are they shouting? Are they ripping up their paper? Are they yelling? Or are they just like putting their head down on their desk? So always wanting to describe like what is the behavior that's actually happening, not what's not happening, if that makes sense. Okay, so I wanted to talk about briefly the functions of behavior from a behavior analytical lens. For the folks who are here attending, is this something that you have heard about and are familiar with, the idea of like functions of behavior? You might have seen this in an FBA or about, okay. I also want to say, okay, so everyone, thumbs up, you got it. I really wanted this to feel super helpful. So I don't want to just be giving you information that you already know. So I have like a zillion slides about a million different things, but I really wanted to actually hear from folks. And this is actually a little tricky, Shelby, because I realized like we're wanting to like record a workshop, but then you had said something about like pausing the workshop when people share out their own things. Is it possible to just like, since there's only a couple of people, we just like talk earlier on instead of going through some of the slides first? Is that okay?
Would you like to pause the video now, the recording
I
now,
guess,
and get some background information and then resume?
yeah, let's do that. I think that could
Okay.
feel
And the
good.
only reason we do that is just to protect people's privacy.
Absolutely. I
Okay, great.
100% think that's great. Um, Access to a tangible item, like this student really wants this thing that you have. It's their phone. We know how hooked we and our students are on phones. Like it is like a very, very real thing that we're all really, really sucked in, and that those things are really important. And for some kids, like that's even more of a lifeline than others. Like we don't know what's going on with that student. And like having that phone might be like an even added sort of sense of security or safety or connection that they're really needing. So a few things. And I'm going to say some things, and like you might be like, I've already tried that, or I haven't tried that. So like feel free to just jump right in or be like, yeah, it worked or it didn't work. The first thing I would say is like, have you spoken with this student when they're calm and maybe even when they have their phone, to sort of like workshop it with them? Also, how old are your kids? I assume old enough to have a phone, like middle school or
20.
older. 20.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And yes, so it is something that has always been a classroom expectation. Um, there were things happening at home that phone was used to keep them calm more over the summer. And so when they returned, it was more of a bigger issue. So if there is a change, where if normally if we go to a walk and a phone is allowed during that time, that is fine because that's their break. If we have to say, hey, we can't do it because we're going to be in a different environment and it's a safety concern, or it is that they come into the classroom in the morning and they refuse to put it away when they know that's the expectation. There's been more problems related to that because it's unlimited access at home where they
Right.
don't, they're almost not being able to function without it at this point with headphones and watching videos.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And what population of students do you work with?
I run the transition program. So it's the 18 to 21-year-old program from when they've graduated to gain those employability and life skills.
Okay.
Yep.
And are they in your classroom all day, or are
All
your
day,
students moving between classrooms?
all day.
So you're like the one teacher, the one expectation.
Yeah.
It's like clear across the board, the
Yeah, it's not
consistency.
changing throughout the day per
Okay,
teacher. Yeah.
great. So that was another thing I was going to say. Like, are we like seeing this in every classroom with every grown up? You're like the one grown up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the same
So that's
expectation for 2 years. This is the second year. So
okay.
yeah, definitely
Good
not
to know.
first year out adjusting to the rules or anything like that.
And are there any alternatives? So when we're thinking about a behavior that we want to see less of, so that's our target behavior, right? Maybe
Yeah.
I'll skip ahead and do. So here's our target behavior. Our target behavior in this instance is the elevated voice, the pushing of the desk. You listed one other thing, but those were the two big ones
Oh,
that stood out.
slamming fist down.
Slamming fist down. Um, a replacement behavior that we'd want to see that might serve the same function is that student saying like, I'm really pissed off. I'm really annoyed right now. Like we don't expect a student, especially who's 20 years old, to not have feelings or not be annoyed. We get annoyed about things all the time, but
Mhm.
we do want to identify what is an appropriate way for a 20-year-old to express their annoyance when they're in like a school or work setting. It is like you're in this transition program. So wanting to practice and talk about like, and you know what? I need to go close my door because I'm working from home in the moment and I hear little feet coming. Be right back. Thanks. Wanted to cut off the interruption, a little visit before it happened. So really thinking about, and maybe this is even a time when you would talk to the student when they are calm about like, and all the students, this could be like a class-wide, almost like an LCL lesson, like what are the ways that we can express our frustration that are really appropriate and safe? And you can have them practice it, model it, like you model what it looks like when you're really frustrated. You guys can like talk about what it feels like to be frustrated. What does it feel like in their bodies? Like really wanting to acknowledge like the student really is frustrated. They really do want their phone. We're not trying to tell them that they shouldn't have their phone. But we really do need to also offer safe and appropriate ways for them to express that frustration. So one, it's like identifying what are their replacement behaviors. And for a student who's 20, like having them be a part of that conversation feels really important. And making sure that it's appropriate for them. Like, I don't know in your school if you like have a break space that has like a punching bag or like a safe space to be like kicking a wall or like, you know, doing something that's like letting actual frustration or aggression out in a way that's not going to harm or escalate or trigger other students. Like, because we do want to be really mindful of that. I also wonder about, we want to do maybe some creative planning. Like, if we know that this is happening consistently every day, which it sounds like it is, maybe the student does need a slightly different routine when it comes to their phone. So something I'm thinking is like maybe they come into the school building and if there is like a different sort of break space where it's safer to like let out all that rage and frustration somewhere near the office or with an admin or a different room away from students, we can say, hey, we know that like turning your phone in for the day is terrible and awful and like makes you so mad. Because of that, we want to give you space to do that and outside of the classroom's the space. So therefore, like, let's make a plan. Who can you go turn your phone into? And then have some moments to kind of be angry and upset about this. So by the time you get to class, like you go to class like when you feel ready and are calm. That way you're not having an explosion in your classroom every day. And again, making other students feel unsafe because that feels like a really big concern.
Yeah.
Um,
So they
is
don't
there
turn in their
anything you think?
phones. They don't
Oh,
turn in
they
their
just,
phones because we do very much run it like a workplace setting because the main
right.
goal, that my boss doesn't require me to hand him my phone when
Totally.
so it's very much them putting it away on their own. Like they put it in their backpack or their locker, wherever they want to put it. And we do meet that student outside of the classroom in the morning to start that process outside without other people
Perfect.
around. It's usually if we return from an outing or coming back from lunch, and then that expectation is like, okay, well, now you're back in the classroom, you got to put it away. Um, and that's when it usually happens.
So it's like those middle of the day
Hmm.
routines.
Yeah.
I wonder, is there a way to emulate a little bit more of what you do in your morning routine to help that student almost like be able to handle the frustration better? Because like if you're doing something kind of like outside the classroom, giving them a moment to like meet that expectation before coming in, maybe at least for the start, do that same thing for those other transition and not expect like, well, now they've just been on their phone again, because
Yeah.
I imagine at lunch or at break, like they're on their phone, that's like what they're
Hmm.
engaging with. Giving them that same sort of moment of like, hey, remember, lunch is over in 5 minutes. And maybe they even start to like do some self monitoring with timers, like giving themselves some warnings. I don't know if they've tried that either, or like you've tried that with them. Like, I know we do verbal warnings, but like if they're getting like a little notification on their phone being like, you got 1 more minute, you got 30 more seconds, like
Yeah.
maybe that will make them more mad, but maybe not. But also like letting them be in charge. Like, hey, set yourself a 5 minute timer so that you remember that your time's going to be up
Okay.
soon or something. So that way, again, like I do that for myself, kind of in a different way where I'm like, I don't want to be on my phone too long. And I'll like set timers for myself, being like, you get 5 minutes to scroll around right now. And then I'll like ignore it. And then you're like, okay, 5 more minutes. And after enough times, I'm like, okay, like I really should put this down. Like I told myself I don't want to do this. And theirs is more like a warning from
Yeah.
themselves. Like,
Hmm.
I know I'm going to have to start doing whatever I need to do to get ready to turn this in. The other thing in behavior is always thinking about what how is that student going to get reinforced? How are we going to give them something that they want for doing the replacement behavior, which is actually really hard. So
Hmm.
if this student is really angry because they do not want to give up their phone and they do a whole song and dance and rigmarole and like figure out their replacement behaviors and they do it and they stay safe and they keep everyone else feeling safe, is there some way to let them know that they have done a good job, give them that positive feedback? So of course we're going to want to be giving a ton of verbal
Hmm.
praise, like, hey, and for a 20-year-old, like it's not going to be the same as like a little kid, like, hey, great job doing your thing. But like it might be like a, I love how you put that away, or just like a thumbs up or like a little nod or something to acknowledge them, something that's going to be meaningful for them. In reinforcement, we always want to be meaningful for that individual. What
Hmm.
works for one thing is not going to work for another kid. So I don't know if in your school you do any sort of like token system, like token economy, where like they're able to earn points or something in order, like for meeting different expectations. And I only say that
For
because
my
it's like, it
demographic,
sounds like it's a little babyish.
yeah, most of
And
them would be very offended by that.
totally,
Yes.
because we're not doing an actual token,
Yeah.
like, here,
No.
you get a thing on your clipboard. But you and I show up to work because we get a paycheck. Like a
Hmm.
paycheck is actually just a different
Yeah.
like sort of token economy. And if like your paycheck stopped coming, like you'd probably be less motivated to keep going to work if your job stopped paying you. And I think there is something to be said. Like if we are working to teach these students skills for a workplace, being able to manage their own technology appropriately is part of that skill for the workplace that they're getting paid to do when they're there. Like when you go to a job, you're getting paid to do whatever your job is and probably also put your phone away for that time. Um, so it can be thought of in that way. Like they he should, is it a he? I made that assumption. Like they should get something for putting their phone away as a, but it doesn't have to be like a coupon. So I
Yeah.
guess I just wonder, like, is there anything that you can think of, like any extra access to an activity, extra time on their phone, maybe for the end of the week, like something that they're able to almost like negotiate and say, like, hey, if I'm able to have a smooth transition back from my outings and my lunch without having these behaviors that are really unsafe and make people uncomfortable, I'm actually able to like earn extra time because like this isn't a job. Like they're not getting paid to be there. But we are wanting them to like move towards that. So I think doing something that feels like they're getting something out of it, the same way
Yeah.
like we get something out of showing up to our workplace and like being professional and doing what's like part of our roles. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it does. I'll have to think on it because then
Hmm.
like I could see it from the other side of, but I have this whole other set of students who are meeting these expectations. So why is this one getting extra time when they've always done it? So then is it something I need to implement class wide? And if so, what would that look like type of
That
thing?
was my next question is like, would you be opposed to doing something class wide where students who are able to transition their technology away after breaks, which of course we know we're really targeting just for this one student
Hmm.
who's struggling with it, but we can say, hey, that's an expectation in our workplace here or our school workplace.
Yeah.
And we're getting ready to transition this skill over to our job workplaces. Um, and so, yeah, any student who gets like 4 or 5 perfect days or 10 perfect transitions or however you want to set it up as a system
Mhm.
can earn like an extra 20 minutes of break time Friday afternoon, like the last 20 minutes of the day. So you don't even have to worry about taking the phone away again. Like they just
Yeah.
go off into their weekend and make it like a nice, easy thing for yourself on a Friday. Um, and then if that student's not meeting it, then like they just wouldn't get to participate for that week.
Yeah.
And maybe for that student, maybe you have like a class-wide expectation of like pretty high bar because the rest of your students are already doing this easily. Like it's just naturally happening. So maybe the thing that gets differentiated with this student is if they're doing these behaviors like 10 out of 10 times right now, like every time they're coming back from a break, um, maybe you say, hey, if you can get to like 50% of your transitions being smooth, this week, then you can earn it. And like you can like
Mhm.
raise that bar on them
Work it.
slowly.
Yeah.
So everyone is actually getting reinforced for having that desired behavior. And you're actually meeting them where they're at to try to
Mhm.
shape their behavior up to where the rest of the
Yeah.
students are.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. Um, awesome. I want to be mindful of the time. Cool. Maybe we'll pause there and pop over to how about we do Shelby and then Peyton will like end on you because yours is kind of maybe some more generalized tips and tricks. Cool. Okay, so Shelby, I'm actually going to stay on the same screen because I think um, when you get into a classroom, when it's not just one student having a behavior, like in um, Skylene's example, like that was like, it's like a very obvious, like, what's the behavior we're seeing? What's the behavior we'd rather see? Like the target and the replacement. In yours, when there's multiple behaviors happening at once with students, sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult to wrap our head around what are the actual target behaviors we're seeing and then what are the appropriate replacement behaviors. Like we have to kind of like dig a little deeper and like look at it through a few angles. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm like misremembering, in your scenario that's happening in this classroom, there's one student who might get escalated for any number of reasons, and they're having, I imagine, some like louder behaviors of yelling or crying or slamming their desk or something like this, like something that's quite disruptive to the classroom. And then you have two other students who are almost like instigating or making fun of or kind of like egging on that student in a way that's like really unkind and also very unhelpful. And I imagine escalating them further. Okay, so
Yes,
that's
that's
the
right.
scenario.
And the
So,
behaviors that the students are kind of egging them on are pretty inappropriate as well.
so just like as far as like what language they're using.
Yes, that's right. And it's the
Okay,
language specifically that kind of triggers the other kiddo.
which they know.
They know.
Those kiddos, they certainly know that. So, going back to the idea of functions of behavior, not only is attention a function of behavior, specific attention can be function like the driver of behavior. So, peer attention or a specific peer's attention can drive a behavior more than like attention from a caregiver or attention from a teacher or an adult. Um, and sometimes it's reversed. Some kids really love attention from adults or specific adults, and like they could care less about the peers in their classroom and, all different scenarios. So it sounds like for these students in the classroom, that specific kind of attention, which is really just watching another student of theirs get upset and escalating to be further upset, that is the motivation. A few different things that we can look at. One, what is the replacement behavior that we are expecting of those two students? Ideally, the replacement behavior is like that student's escalating and those two kids just maybe look at each other and say, oh, our peer is having such a difficult time. We should sit quietly at our desk and continue our work quietly. That would be the ideal replacement behaviors. That being said, I also think I have a good idea of like which classroom you're talking about. And that replacement behavior or set of replacement behaviors just doesn't necessarily seem within grasp for some of those students as far as like the skills that they have. So we have to also think about like what are like the next best alternatives. I heard you say about separating. So like a really good replacement behavior is for a student to say like, I need to leave the room right now, or be at least open to physically leaving the room right now in order to help de-escalate the situation. So one replacement behavior that we can work towards is the students physically walking away from the situation. There's a few different ways we can do that. But it does have to be really motivating for that student. So like whatever the student's getting out of staying in the situation, which is like very highly reinforcing attention in like a particular form from that student, we need to give them something like that or even better for walking away and staying safe and not instigating. So it would be really working with that classroom staff and identifying like, what can we set up that is as fun, if not more fun for these students somewhere else on a different side of the room, so that we can really motivate the students to engage in the behaviors that we want to see them engaging in. Because if we say, well, we just want them to come to this other room and continue to do their work over there, they're like, I don't want to do my work anyway. I'm already not wanting to do my work. And I definitely am not going to do my work. And I'm definitely not going to do my work in the other classroom if there's a situation here that's like infinitely fun for me. So, and it might feel kind of icky. It might be like, well, they get to go watch like their favorite YouTube videos that like they're not even allowed to watch like the rest of the day. But like if they can get up and leave out of a behavior situation within, with no more than 2 reminders and without saying anything very inappropriate to their classmate before going, they get access, like free reign to like their favorite game or YouTube channel or whatever school appropriate, of course. But we really do need it to be highly motivating just for those first steps of teaching them to walk away. Once they're able to walk away for something that's really, really, really fun, then we can start to shape down that behavior and say, okay, cool. Like now it's not free reign. You get to watch for like 8 minutes and then you get to go back to doing your work. And then you get something really awesome after you finish your work. So it's like, we do need to shape the behavior, but we need it to be with something that they love. Because what they really love is like bothering their friend. From the other perspective, which is always wanting to prevent fires instead of always just trying to put them out, is like, what can be done to positively affect the relationship between those students and the classroom culture, so that maybe they're less likely to want to engage in that behavior. It's just really tricky with kids because they do want to poke each other. They do want to get a rise out of each other. That's like a pretty normal thing. Another thing that we can talk about is like, well, maybe we shape the behavior by just saying like, hey, maybe you stay and like maybe you say some things to your friends, but if you say these particular words and like be very clear and identify with them, like what are the most inappropriate things that like really cannot be said at school, and then like give them some replacements. Say like, here's another thing that you can say to get a rise out of someone, but it's kind of more school appropriate. Like we don't really want kids to be instigating each other, but we know that they will anyway. So if kids are going to be like instigating each other either in the classroom or out on the playground, I'd rather them not be saying things that are like really violent or hateful or like, I don't know the category of words that they're saying, but I imagine it's just really inappropriate. And can we give them more kid appropriate language to be using? and then praise them and give them so much reinforcement if you hear them saying it. I think what I've noticed in some classrooms is like I'll hear a kid be like, "What the freak?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that was awesome. That took so much self-control." And they said the nice word. And then an EA comes over and is like, "Hey, we don't say that in school." And I'm like, "No, they did awesome." Like that was like, we should praise them right there for like working so hard to stay school appropriate in their language, and using an awesome replacement behavior. So I think it's also a matter of like training up the staff to know like, hey, what we're actually hoping for them to do is like use slightly less terribly mean words and like only kind of mean words that are more kid appropriate. And so if you hear them at any point saying these like toned down words, like actually praise them and say, "Oh, I love your word choice there. That was like so much better for school." And that doesn't feel good because like, we're also like, we don't want kids to say mean things ever. But again, like we want to be systematically shaping behavior over time. And sometimes that means like we're just keeping the bar kind of low, but it's still higher than where it's at, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so then I guess as far as like that, like preventing fires piece, are these students who ever play well together or get along or have like common interests at all or that you know of?
Um, Not as much as would be helpful to kind of like use that in conversation
Mm-hmm.
about like the impact that they're having on that student. So no, that's the short answer is no. And I agree with you, like, really building classroom community, I think would be a great first step for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Heather, I was kind of wondering, just following up on what you were saying about like shaping some of like the language, and being like, okay, we know the students are still going to do that. Like, can we substitute some more kid appropriate or school appropriate language? Um, because sometimes when this is happening, it becomes a bit of a thing. And several adults will, for good reason, be trying to like interfere with the situation. And I'm wondering like if the adults were reacting in a way where we were like, oh, hey, we see what you're doing, we know what you're doing, like if you can stop doing it in X amount of time, then this will be provided, some kind of reinforcement or something like that. Is that appropriate so that they can like learn that like they have some control over that, or is that just not
Totally.
worthwhile?
I think so. I think so. And I think for me, the most important thing from like the situation I'm imagining with what you described is that there's many different adults all trying to intervene without like a set plan.
Mm,
And so I think, I mean, you've been in one of these trainings with me where I'm like really going through like what what makes a good behavior plan. And I'm actually gonna all your faces. Oh yeah, okay. I like, couldn't see my own slide. All your beautiful faces are in the way. Okay. So like what makes a good behavior plan? It feels like that's going to be a really important piece, because it sounds like this is also
mm,
behavior that happens with some regularity. So it feels really appropriate to be able to get every grown up who works with these students, every grown up who's going to maybe be around when this happens, and say, we need a set plan. When this is happening, what are the phrases that we are going to say as the grown-ups? And writing it down, almost like a script. So no one has to come up with what to say. Like in the calm moments, figuring out, okay, what's going to make the most sense? What do we want the reinforcers to be if students use this language versus the other language? What do we want the reinforcement to be or the plan to be if the students are able to walk away to the other room? What reinforcement can we have waiting for them in the other room when this happens? Another thing as part of that plan is going to be thinking about what are these precursor behaviors? Like, is this student who's initially escalating, are there signs that that student's going to escalate? And is it possible to separate the students then and remove that first student so that they can just kind of de-escalate and do their own thing somewhere else and not even interrupt the classroom?
yeah, it can even happen on the playground, and in that, in that type of situation,
Totally.
that's something that's not as reasonable, but like
Absolutely.
possible, I should say. But yes, absolutely. In the classroom setting, that's I would say the plan A. Hmm.
Right. And so I would even have it like list out like when in the classroom, plan A is notice when this student is starting to escalate and try to remove that student first and have a set plan of like, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Who are they going to do it with? What are the things we're going to say? You can even have a set script. And then it's like, okay, well, plan B. when we're in the classroom, we didn't actually get there in time. And the other students are starting to get riled up themselves and be like, ooh, we're going to have fun and we're going to say something really mean now. Maybe that is when someone swoops in. It's like, maybe the plan says like, whoever the nearest adult is to student A and B, they're going to come in and say, hey, I just want to remind you that if you're able to use kind language or school appropriate, it's not going to be kind, school appropriate language, then you are able to earn this. And if you are unable to use school appropriate language, you're actually going to lose blank, maybe this many minutes off of recess or something. Like swoop in and like remind them, here's the expectations. Those should also be shared, not when they're getting riled up. Like that should be very clear at calm moments. Like, hey, here's the new plan. And let them know we're actually really focusing on the meanness of your words. If you can use and like write it down, like here's all the most mean words, and you like make a little column of that. And then be like, so we don't want you to say these. What are other things you can say that are more school appropriate? And like work with them. Okay, if you're using these words, here's what's going to happen. If you're using these other more school appropriate words, here's what's going to happen. And we want what's going to happen in that case to be really awesome.
Okay.
So for me, it's always about how do we have a plan that's like written out and consistently implemented. So, and I could also share these slides with you, or you already have them, but it's like, how do we do all this pre-work to make a plan and make sure all the grownups are informed about it? Figure out who's going to be implementing the plan, all of the things, sustainable, one thing at a time. In this case, like, let's just focus on like the most mean language and replacing it with slightly less mean language. And then over time, we shape those behaviors to be about other things, maybe just walking away or something like that.
Heather, the right-hand side of your screen.
It's so tricky. There we go. I think the slides are just. I don't know why it does this, but I'll fix it for next time we have a training.
Oh, no worries. I just was, yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So consistently implemented. What are the backup plans? Like, what's the backup plan if we're on the playground and this happens? Like, let's have a playground plan. Let's have a plan for in the classroom. Let's have a plan for in PE. And if all the grownups can like write down the plan and agree on it, and then that way, if you notice someone who's not doing the plan, you can say, hey, remember when student A does this, we're supposed to say this, and try to get it somewhat consistent. And then it's, how do we make sure this is working? I think if it's the school I'm thinking of for you, you guys have regular meetings to talk about behavior. So maybe part of those meetings is like a 5-minute chunk of like, hey, how's the plan going for this? What's working? What's not working? And then, me, I'm always like, are we taking data on this? What's a sustainable data collection system that we can use? Again, as an example, if you're going to just focus on like the meanest words, are you going to focus on like one student and how many mean words they're saying? And maybe that's your data to see, is this getting better? Is this getting worse? Is it staying the same?
Great.
But yeah, I would say for that instance, it's so complex with so many dynamics and so many kids, having a plan so at least all the grown-ups know what they're doing and feel empowered, so that when it happens, they're not like, the grown-ups aren't freaking out and scared. Like they know what the plan is. They're not having to come up with it.
Yeah, that would be so helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, and then last to Peyton, I want to share this other part. Okay, so this is a matrix, and I'm going to zoom in, so don't worry about trying to read it. It's basically a matrix about like when to start a formal behavior analysis process. But when I found this, I really, really, really liked it because I think it goes into so many of the reasons why challenging behaviors happen in classrooms. And of course, this could be for all ages, but I do think it's especially relevant for younger learners in preschool, elementary school age, as they're learning school routines. So there's kind of like 3 categories. The first is predictability. Does the student have a physical or tangible schedule to check off items? If not, like if yes, great. If not, can we make them some sort of schedule or visual? A lot of classrooms have a class-wide schedule. A lot of kids already do have like their own personal visual schedule. And it's just a matter of like, has anyone taught them how to use it? Has anyone given them reinforcement for using it? Like using a schedule is also a skill. Like we all had to learn that. Like we either had like our paper schedule and now we all have our phones, like, but it's a skill to be able to navigate how to even use it as a tool. So do they have that tool of helping them understand the predictability of their day? And then from the student's perspective, are expectations consistent across environments or people? Are reinforcement and correction procedures the same? We know that this is so huge for setting kids off. If they have one expectation with one teacher and a different expectation with their EA, or one expectation in their classroom, but then a different expectation in PE or another special or in the cafeteria, for some kids, those differences, that lack of consistency is really, really, really hard. And so it's like really kind of becoming a detective and saying, like, is there a lack of predictability here that might be contributing to this behavior? And how can I work with all the different people in the environment to try to get it more predictable for this student? And also teaching kids that resiliency piece and like talking to them openly about like, hey, sometimes things are not predictable. And when things that are unexpected happen, like when we go to the cafeteria, like maybe the cafeteria is just super tricky because it is, and it's like full of kids and it's super loud and all this stuff. And then coming up with like a plan with that kid, like, what can we do to make that unpredictable part of your day feel better for you? So it's always about working directly with the student and trying to, again, get in there like a detective and figure out like what pieces can we pull to make their day more smooth. The next one is motivation. We only do things as humans because we're motivated to do them for one reason or another. Like, we show up at our jobs because someone pays us to be there, and we want to get paid so that we can like have money to do all the other things that we want and also need to do. So it's like we are highly motivated to show up at our jobs and to keep our jobs. But also we like choose our jobs based on also how good it makes us feel, because like having connections and things that have meaning like also are reinforcing. So it's like all of our behaviors are motivation based. And so are our students. So making sure, does the student have adequate motivation? For some kids, like just getting a teacher to say like, great job, or like, you did your assignment, like good work, like it's just not quite enough. So sometimes we do have to build in these additional systems of motivation for them. And that is where these sort of like token system or reinforcement systems can come into play. And it doesn't always have to be like a bunch of stickers on a chart and then they equal something. Like, I think those are really great for some kids, less great for other kids. But a matter of like, hey, if you do really well in the cafeteria today, which I know is really hard, and if you use some of the strategies we practice, then we can actually leave the cafeteria 5 minutes early. Like, I will come 5 minutes early and take you out so that we can get like an extra 5 minutes of recess. Like, that's going to be super motivating to that student, one, because, well, if they like going to recess and if they like you, then those two things are going to make it motivating. But also, that's an aversive situation for them being in the cafeteria. So getting to leave it early is also reinforcing, because like you're taking them out of something uncomfortable. So always figuring out like, how can we use motivation to help students along and to help build up those skills and replacement behaviors that we want to see. And then the last one is appropriate instruction. I think this one is really, really tricky. Is the work at an appropriate level? Is it engaging or interesting, or is it too hard? I just think we see this a lot. We see a lot of really big behaviors from small kiddos who are either in a kindergarten classroom and they literally have already known how to read and write for a long time, and they're just like so bored about hearing about the alphabet again. But they like don't really have the language to say that, so they're just like like running around like tossing stuff over. Or what we see a lot of also in certain classrooms, where I think Peyton you'll be, the work is so far beyond where a student is capable of, and instead of being able to ask for help, students have just learned to get out of work by having really big behaviors, because it's easier to deal with that than deal with the fact that like I'm 12 and I really struggle with reading and writing, and like that's a super hard thing for me. So also being able to like make those connections with student, and not only say like, okay, well, we do need to like really work on building your skills so that you can do your academics and not shy away from pushing kids, but also have conversations about like how it is really hard to like do hard things, and like but that they are kids who can do hard things, and like build up their sense of like confidence and resiliency. Okay, what else was I going to say about littles? I think it might already be things that you know, but this idea that like being able to talk through situations and problems is a skill that just might be lacking, because most kids at an elementary level are still developing that skill even without any additional disabilities or traumas or any other number of factors that affect our kids that we're usually they're serving, like with the more challenging behaviors. Um, so being able to be creative in ways that we have kids communicate with us. So thinking about that replacement behavior, if some of the replacement behaviors is being able to communicate either a feeling or a need, how can we meet that student where they're at? Like, can we give them like a card in their pocket that says like I'm angry, and they can like hand the card over to somebody so that they don't have to go find the words, or putting like a visual on their desk taped to their table that's like I need a break, and all they have to do is like tap the thing that says I need a break. And eventually one day we want them to be able to say like this is hard, I need help, or this is hard, I need a break. But maybe they're just not there yet to being able to find those words when they're escalating. So giving them something easy, something to point at, something to touch, something to hand you, and maybe like I know a lot of teachers at that elementary age level, especially in some special ed rooms, have like on their lanyard for work, like their badge, they might even have a bunch of pictures of like, I need a break, I want to walk, I want to go to the gym, I need water, whatever. And then like that way you could like literally like hold up like some like little laminated cards of like, you need a break, you need a walk, and like kind of give kids like a visual of like, yeah, that one, that one, that one. Can you read me a book? Like those sorts of like you can have all sorts of pictures on there, and give them like just another way of communicating. And then yeah, also teaching those replacement behaviors of like, well, what am I trying to say? If there's a student who I just like thinking of like a kindergartner because you said like elementary age kid, so I'm thinking of like the most elementary age kid. If there's a kinder student and they are having a hard time all day, but particularly during circle time. And it's like there's like a story that's being read and they're meant to be sitting for like 20 minutes, like while we do calendar and this and that, and like listen to a story. We want to take a baseline of like, okay, we know that they've been able to like sit on average for like 1 to 2 minutes before they really start to lose their mind. So what I would say is like, let's get creative in how we shape their behavior. And we say, okay, we know 1 to 2 minutes is their max. So I'm going to actually set a timer for 1.5 minutes to start. And if we can sit for 1.5 minutes, I'm actually going to take you out of the classroom. We're going to go do something super fun. So now you've gotten some reinforcement for doing the really hard thing of sitting for a whole minute and a half. And you do that for a few days. And maybe that's like awesome and it's working. And then you say, okay, cool. Like we think 1.5 minutes, like we've got it. And also they know that we're going to leave in 1.5 minutes, go do something fun. So then maybe you start setting your timer for like 2 minutes and then 2.5 minutes. And you start to just like slowly increase their time. And I think some teachers or administrators are like, what, you mean like you're not even going to try to get them to sit? You're going to like just like let them go play basketball? And in my mind, I'm like, they're already not sitting, they're already missing that whole time. So I would rather have a strategic plan to build their tolerance and their skill set over time in a way that like we're doing it on purpose. Like I would much rather take a kid and be like, let's go play before they have a big behavior, than waiting for them to tear up a classroom and then be like, okay, let's get out of here. Like that's just better for everyone. And it's also reinforcing that replacement behavior, that like good behavior that we want to see, instead of being like, oh, I have to tear up a classroom to get out of here. I'd rather them just say, I want to get out of here. And you're like, cool, let's do it. I love how you asked nicely. I like that you didn't rip the thing off the wall or whatever. So hopefully those are just some helpful starting points.